Hey guys, so today we are reviewing Pray for the Devil. Now, I don't know if there is a lot of hype surrounding this movie. I'm not really sure if anyone was truly excited about this one, just because it, based on the trailer, seems like a very run-of-the-mill, predictable type of horror movie. So I don't think there was like a huge hype around this theater release or anything like that, but I thought I would review it anyway because it's a theater release of a horror movie. So why not? No one really requested it, but here we are. Here's my thoughts anyway. I won't be offended if no one watches this video. So the first thing is a little story. So if you don't care about my personal life, you can skip on forward in this video, but I got engaged on Halloween. Isn't that cute? Now, the reason why there's a story attached to that with the movie is because for some reason, bad possession movies are they're a staple in my relationship. So Ryan and my first date was on my birthday and we saw The Last Exorcism Part 2 in theaters in 2013 in March. And that obviously 10 years later, we watch Pray for the Devil and get engaged on the same day. So almost 10 years later. So I think really bad exorcism movies are just a marker of our relationship, and they always offer a little bit of nostalgia, even if they're technically bad. Anyway, sorry I spoiled my review a little bit by saying that this is a really bad exorcism movie, but this is a really harsh review too. So this one is one of the mean ones, I'm not gonna lie. Some people like to say that I like to hate things, which I just like to reply with, you don't know my channel then, or you haven't seen my other videos, because I like a lot of things that other people don't. So yeah, I've been told I'm a contrarian and I'm a hater at the end of the day. But you know, that's what I get for being a voice on the internet, someone who enjoys and consumes horror and talks about it. Anyway, let's get into the actual review for Pray for the Devil. The Roman Catholic Church combats a global rise in demonic possessions by reopening schools to train priests to perform exorcisms. Although nuns are forbidden to perform this ritual, a professor recognizes Sister Anne's gifts and agrees to train her. Thrust onto the spiritual front line, she soon finds herself in a battle for the soul of a young girl who's possessed by the same demon that tormented her own mother years earlier. So the first question I have about Pray for the Devil is, did we need another exorcism movie? And the second question I have is, why are they always the same and none of them are ever original? Like The Exorcist was original. Why are we doing the same formula for all of them? You know what I mean? At least with The Last Exorcism, it was found footage, okay? We did the same kind of tropey stuff, but it was found footage. So there was like something else to it, a little bit different kind of horror elements going on given that it's found footage. I just feel like there's so many things that you can do with demonic possession that is something that can be genuinely terrifying if done, you know, creatively, but they all end up always feeling this exact same. They always do the same exorcism tropes of, you know, literally any of them you can think of, and it's just run of the mill. It's just your average exorcism movie, and that's what you get with this one. There is something a little unique about it in that this is kind of a feminism movie. I did enjoy that angle, you know, having a nun become like the first exorcist in the religion. I thought that was an interesting take on it, but then they threw in this like shame and guilt angle in the plot later, and just was disjointed from that feminist POV. You know what I mean? Like, I liked the strong, powerful female. Loved that. Great that she could become an exorcist. You know, I think that's cool because they normally aren't. So they tried to do something unique with it, but then they just, you know, they did something really weird within that I'm not going to talk about until spoilers. So it just feels a lot like shaming women at the same time, you know? So I'm going to say that this is one of the worst movies that I have seen this year. One of the worst. And yes, I will be doing a whole ranking video on all of the horror movies that I've watched this year. I think I've watched over 45 new horror movies released this year so far, so it's going to be a long video, but I will do best and worst, you know, ranking of all of them. This one will definitely be in the worst category, and again, I warned you this is a harsh review. It's ironic to me that I thought Smile was going to be the Bye-Bye Man of the year, you know, with like, technically it's a bad movie, but sometimes still fun to watch. And some people will like it and have fun with it. But then Pray for the Devil came in, and that ended up being the one minus the fun. You know, I mean, some people are going to like this movie. That's just a matter of fact, you know. But for me personally, I don't see many redeeming qualities about this movie as someone who watches all of the new horror movie releases. This feels like very run-of-the-mill. For maybe the general public, this is an entertaining popcorn movie. I just feel like there wasn't enough offered to the viewer for it to be a really entertaining experience. I just feel like the writing and the performances were just in general so bad. A lot of cheesy lines that made me roll my eyes. And overall, just a cliche. This movie ended up feeling like a cliche, even though they did have that angle of a woman being, you know, the first woman exorcist. It wasn't enough, and they really didn't do a whole lot with that. It could be the performances were kind of bad because of the writing. Now, I do think the main character was fine as an actor in this. I think her performance was okay as Sister Anne. But beyond that, none of the other characters mattered. None of them. Not one other person mattered, and they all felt like just a means to move along the story, and like we don't care about any of them. Now, the horror elements in this are exactly what you expect. There was only one horror element that was kind of cool looking, and it's on the poster. So that's really the only moment that's like, oh, that's kind of messed up. And also the CG was terrible throughout all of this. And then on top of that, the horror elements are few and far between, in my opinion. I don't feel like this reads as like a horror movie, you know, like Smile at least, although filled with jump scares, had some horror elements followed throughout the entire movie. Whereas this one, it was basically a drama movie with jump scares. And I'm not one to like nitpick too much on the genres and subgenres of things. Like a horror movie is a horror movie, whatever. But I'm just reporting to you that the horror elements in this are very minor. Maybe a good beginner movie. And it's just one of those movies that I feel like suffered from a PG-13 rating because with all exorcism movies, I want them to push the limits. Think the scene in Suspiria, the remake, where the girl is breaking all of her bones in the dance scene in the room. That could be a really cool type of scene in an exorcism movie, right? Like that's what I want from these kinds of movies. I want messed up, and you just don't get any of that. Like I never felt tense. There wasn't any like build up. Not one jump scare was effective for me. But it just feels like equal parts, not even equal, but like drama. A lot of drama that is very shallow. It feels very shallow and not explored enough. And I'd be fine if it was more serious in tone, but there's certain scenes that are there for like comedic relief and characters there for comedic relief, and wasn't working for me. And like I said before, they tried very hard for us to care about the characters. Like very hard. And you care a bit about Sister Anne, but again, I just feel like everything's pretty shallow and pretty generic and predictable. But especially the side character played by Christian Navarro, who I know from 13 Reasons Why. Why was he so bad in this? He literally does absolutely nothing in this movie. It's almost comical, the things that he's doing while major scenes are going on, including things that directly affect him and plot points that are about him. He's just off doing nothing in the background on the side. He's just a nobody, but somehow there's a story, a plot point that revolves around him. You could tell that he is a non-character and just a means for her to move along in the story. Like at the end of the day, she still needs all these men to help her with her mission, right? And they're there for her to like tell things to, instead of, you know, because if she's alone, that would be weird. So it just progresses the story in that sense. But it was so obvious and so poorly done because we don't care about any of them. So this just is the basic run-of-the-mill horror movie, like exorcism horror movie. It's just very cliche, one of those cliche horror movies. And again, there's an audience for that. It's not for me personally, and I can only report on my own opinion. So while this review is very harsh for this movie, that's all I have to go on. So I'm comparing it to literally everything else I've ever seen all the time. So that's why it's so bad to me, because they didn't do anything new with it. And it's not even good in the sense of a popcorn fun movie. I don't even think there's enough funness to it to offer that. And listen, I like plenty of technically bad horror movies. I like The Haunting of Molly Hartley, okay? I'm no horror snob here. And I definitely don't shame or judge anyone for liking movies that are technically bad, right? That's all subjective anyway. But for me personally, this just wasn't that fun. And I found myself to be really bored throughout watching this movie. And it's only an hour and a half. And it felt like 2 hours trying to get through this movie. And also it feels like a streaming movie. I'm not sure if a theater release was really smart. Obviously the timing was really smart. It came out Halloween weekend, so I'm sure a lot of people went to see this. I'm sure it did okay at the box office. Because of the timing of things. That's why I saw it, right? Because it's Halloween. Like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna go watch a horror movie. Any movie could have come out that day and I would have watched it because it was Halloween, you know, and also because of my job. But obviously I enjoy horror movies too. So a lot of character decisions don't make sense in this, as usual. And again, I know this is harsh. I'm not trying to nitpick this movie, but I want to talk about spoilers just for a second, to talk about a few things that don't make sense in this movie to me and I wasn't a fan of. So I'm going to spoil the movie just so you're aware. The demon possessing the little girl is ultimately trying to get in and possess Sister Anne. Okay, that's like the main plot point, and that's why the poster says "let me in" or let me in. I think that's what it said. So it really wants Sister Anne, not the little girl. Now it uses the little girl to get to Sister Anne because, spoiler alert, the little girl is Sister Anne's daughter that she gave up for adoption when she got pregnant at 15. Is there a horrifying pregnant scene? Yes, there is. Did I expect that? Absolutely not. Actually, it's not that horrific. Honestly, an accurate portrayal of what I'm feeling currently in my body, with the baby pushing on my skin and elbowing me constantly. Anyway, there's a side plot point of Christian Navarro's character, this priest whose sister is currently possessed but won't be accepted into the hospital / church that the other possession cases are in. So they decide to do an exorcism themselves, them too. He does absolutely nothing the whole time. Anyway, but the demon is like torturing her because she got rid of her baby because she was R-worded. So that's where the shame and judgment of women who sacrifice their children or like their babies from dire situations or consequences, you know, I'm not sure if it was an abortion or just an adoption like our main character, but there's like this shame and guilt associated with it. And it just like, why are we highlighting that when this is a feminist movie? It just felt very off. And the whole point of his sister being possessed is because she felt so much shame for giving up her baby that she invited the demon in because she thought she deserved it for that sacrifice. And I just don't feel like that's the right message when you're doing a movie about a first female exorcist. You know what I mean? Like, it just feels very disjointed to me. Maybe I'm reading the room a little wrong, you know? I could be misreading things, but it just felt off to me. Anyway, back to the demon and the little girl. So the demon does not want the little girl, her daughter basically, and wants Sister Anne ultimately. That's what happens. So Sister Anne figures out it's her daughter that she gave up for adoption, and she decides to sacrifice herself. I can't say that without thinking of Harry Potter. Sacrifice herself, invite the demon in, because that's the ultimate sacrifice. She's now sacrificing herself because she feels that she was selfish when she was 15 by giving up her baby for adoption. What's the message? I'm not sure what the message of this movie is anyway. She becomes possessed, you know, the main character becomes possessed by this demon. We get to the climax. Immediately the demon wants to kill the baby, the girl. Immediately it wants to kill the little girl. And it's like, you were just in her body. Like, why are you immediately going after the girl? It didn't make any sense. Like, why the demon? It didn't care about anyone else. It just wanted to kill the little girl. Why? I'm just a little confused why that was the motive all of a sudden. It's like, you got what you wanted. You got the body of her. So like, why are we killing this little girl now? You don't care about the little girl. And then again, Sister Anne is exorcising herself. She's performing an exorcism on herself essentially. They're like in the basement of this church school. I'm going to call it that. There's a vat of holy water, right? And she just, you know, with the cross on her forehead, dives in and is exercising herself. While her friend over here is just picking a lock, doing absolutely nothing for anyone. He could be reading or chanting or praying, and he's just picking a lock because he's locked out. Anyway, the whole climax just doesn't make any sense to me. The message of this movie, I'm just not sure what we're going with and why there's so much shame and guilt attached to women who have to make that sacrifice, whether it be abortion or adoption. Like, why are we shaming women right now? It just felt a little weird. I don't know. Maybe the whole point is like to not feel shame. I don't know. Again, if anyone has a deeper interpretation of this movie and the purpose of that shame and guilt storyline, please let me know. Also, the body count's pretty low, which is to be expected. It's a PG-13 movie. Like I said, this is a situation where it feels like it suffered from a PG-13 rating, but that's because all the deaths were off screen and pretty lame, like the typical possession type death where they're thrown across the room and then they hit their head and then, oh, they died. That's, yeah, you know, that typical stuff. But we don't even see it. Like, we don't get to even see them hit the wall. They just find them and they're dead on the ground because they hit their head on the wall from the demon throwing them, you know what I mean? I just feel like they could have made it a little bit more disturbing, or we get to see something happen. There's just very few scenes of actual horror going on. So I give this 1 out of 5. That's super harsh. I think I rated another movie 1 out of 5 this year. It's the lowest rating I've given to any movie this year because it is just one of the worst that I've seen. I don't see many redeeming qualities. I definitely don't want to seek this out again or ever rewatch it versus something like The Bye Bye Man or Ma even, where it's like a little bad, but in a fun way. There's like fun stuff going on. This was just not fun. There's no fun offered to me to enjoy this again. So I won't be watching it again. But those are my thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts, you know? I'm not trying to take this movie too seriously. I knew what kind of movie it would be going in. It will still be nostalgic to me as the movie we watched right before we got engaged. So just like Last Exorcism Part 2, not technically a good movie, but it's sentimental now. So anyway, leave a comment. Tell me your thoughts of this movie, or are you even going to see it? I'd wait for streaming. It feels like a streaming movie anyway. That's just my thoughts though, my opinion. But yeah, let me know what your opinion is. If you were ever excited about this movie, I don't know. Leave it down below. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.